Hey, and welcome to my first vlog 000. I've been wanting to start a vlog for a while. I've been kind of messing around with YouTube videos, with podcasting and stuff like that. And I feel like this format is like the only format that I feel pretty comfortable with doing. Wanted to keep doing podcasts. I'll tell you guys all about me in a minute, but I wanted to do podcasts. I wanted to kind of get my voice out there. I wanted to talk about all kinds of cool stuff. But podcasts didn't really work out for me just because of, I don't know, I felt like I had to have a strict format with vlogging. I feel like, it's like blogging, right? So you can create your own format and it doesn't really matter. And I've made a few cool videos and with the vlog format, I feel like a little bit more freedom because if anything, I can just export this to audio and podcast it if I want to. And if not, I can share screens, I can take video footage outside, I can take video footage doing whatever I want to do and just kind of play around with not just audio, but video as well. So I'm pretty excited about that. So who am I? My name is Antonin, and I'm a developer. That's what I do during the daytime. I'm a software engineer at a company called Landox, and I love it. I've been doing this for a while. I'm also a writer, unpaid, unrecognized, so I guess like a hobbyist writer. Other than software development, that's what I like doing in spare time. I guess the two are like on par because I do a lot of software development during the day. I like to do a lot of writing during the night. And I guess now I would say that I'm a little bit of a YouTuber with my YouTube videos. I just finished a series called Startup Productivity in Personal Life. And I wanted to continue doing that series, but I kind of realized that it's a little bit... it's not working out anymore because my priorities are slowly shifting. It was a nice little sprint and now it's over. So now I have this kind of, I don't know, loose format. I guess what I'm really looking forward to is possibly having, different series and stuff like that in my vlogs so I can do that startup productivity in personal life. So I can talk about like a whole month of NaNoWriMo, which we are in the NaNoWriMo National Novel Writing Month right now, or I can talk about a month of coding, whatever, and I feel pretty happy about that, especially since I don't know, I just like voicing my opinions. I like talking to people. I like talking about what I do, and I've been doing blogging for like 6 years and 7 years maybe, and I found there were so many people that found it useful, and I got so much feedback and so much positiveness, coming off of it, and so much negativity as well, that I felt like, this is what I really want to do. This is, I find it very satisfying and gratifying when I find somebody, I don't know, reading through my blog or listening to my YouTube video and saying like, hey, this really helped me. And I feel like I have a unique approach to things sometimes. It is the National Novel Writing Month, and that means that I have taken on the challenge of writing 50,000 words within a month. That's 30 days to write 50,000 words, about 1,700 words a day. And you might be thinking, man, that's a lot. It's not. It's not a big deal. It's not that much. On any given month, even without much preparation, I can pretty much crank out 50,000 words. I would say on my months off, like when I'm just kind of writing for fun but don't really have a goal, I can crank out about 30,000 words without really trying. So this isn't much of a challenge other than making sure that I don't let the schedule slip. And that usually happens in my off months. You got a weekend that you just don't feel like working, whatever, but since I'm not aiming for around 50,000 words and I'm aiming for 50,000 words, it's still a little bit of a challenge. But I've got things to help me. So if you're considering NaNoWriMo, I guess it's a little bit too late for that. But if you've been doing NaNoWriMo, like there are a few things that I really would love to suggest. And one of them is joining like a community of writers. So like Reddit or NaNoWriMo is a really cool subreddit to talk to people. But better than that, I'm on a Slack group for that's for writing podcast, and there's a NaNoWriMo channel, and it is just so much fun talking to people there, and we're all kind of buddies on NaNoWriMo, so we can see where we are. When one of us falls behind, we kind of like, hey, like you can do this. We're pretty I guess encouraging of each other, which is nice. And but as far as like let's talk about my history with NaNoWriMo. So I've started, or I guess I participated about 5 times now. Not about. I've participated 5 times. The first time was a failure. I think like 7,000 words. I don't know. I would say that I wasn't as good of a writer as I am right now, and I definitely didn't have as much writing stamina So right now, if I want to write a blog post, I can go ahead and crank out a 10,000 word blog post within a few days, like 10,000 words, and it's not a big deal. But back then, like getting 3,000, 4,000 words, it was a huge deal. It was really difficult. But I failed at around 7,000 or 8,000 words, and I just couldn't recover from it. I was really pissed. The story idea was horrible as well, so that didn't help. But since then, I won 3 nanos, completely finished them. One of them I edited and it's on Amazon, so if you want to check out my Amazon, I'll probably put it in the show notes, amazon.com, author name Antonin Januska. I'm on Goodreads as well. But so I have one of those books there. So I finished 3 nanos, and then I finished 4 nanos. So one of them I finished a week late, and it was last year, and that's because I had a baby at home, and every time I tried to write, I just couldn't. But anyway, yeah, so 3 nanos, 1, 4 finished, and I did write one book outside of Nano, and that was before NaNoWriMo. And that one's self-published too, so you guys are welcome to check it out. Yeah, check out my Amazon for some shitty books. They're not the best material, so just be gentle. It's so much fun though. It's so much fun writing. I will say that there's just, I don't know, I look forward to this time of year mainly because of NaNoWriMo. Like, holidays are nice, but NaNoWriMo is fantastic. So one of my other interests is development, like web development, software engineering, and I'm in a situation where the industry around me is moving very quickly. I'm a JavaScript developer. You may have heard of if you're a software engineer and you're in this space, you may have heard of the article JavaScript fatigue. Well, my former boss wrote that one. And after I read it, like even before, when it was rough, before it came out, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be big because everybody connects with this. Everybody connects with this fatigue. But I still try to test out new technologies. And the question could be like, why? Why do I do that? A lot of people are saying that, well, you don't need to try out play around with every hot framework. And that's fine. You really don't. But I find it pretty useful diving into things that slowly become big trends. Coffee. When Redux came out, a lot of people were like, well, it's just a brand new hot technology, whatever. A few months later, we ended up discussing adoption of Redux at our company, and I played around with it, made a couple of apps. I did a YouTube video series. And I did Twitch streaming for a while, and one of my main topics was Redux. In the end, we ended up adopting it and realized that it solves so many problems. And right now, like today, this week and last week, I've been dealing with a problem that Redux is specifically made for. And if I had not known it, I had not played around with it, I might not have recognized it as a solution. That's one thing. And the other thing is, if I did recognize it as a solution, it would have been too late because I would have to learn it. I have to start working with it. So what I tried to do is, first of all, get a good overview of what frameworks and what different technologies do and why they're special. So like, what's so special about Elm? Elm is a different language, a different programming language. It compiles to JavaScript, which is great. So it means you can use it on the front end. The architecture is Redux. Well, Redux ripped off Elm, or was inspired by Elm. So I know some of these things. I know it's a different programming language. I know it's there's a learning curve to learning the language because it's Haskell based. It doesn't look like JavaScript, but it's incredibly performant. It's incredibly performant and it's very scalable. And one thing I learned is that it's supposedly pretty easy to drop it in to an existing code base and start converting, incrementally converting it. So I know some of these things, and I tried it out, played around with it for a couple hours in the past year. And I realized that while this is great, the language curve, it really is too big of a barrier for an entire team to adopt. It'd be great if we start a new project with a couple of guys that, a couple engineers that already know Elm or want to learn Elm, and then bring everybody else in there. But starting with nobody knowing Elm and nobody having invested any time in it is difficult. So that's for example, that's one example, right? Then there's let's say testing framework Ava. Ava does asynchronous testing, which is great for unit testing. Because it speeds up the process. You fire off like 10 different tests at once rather than cascading one after another. And I played around with it for a couple hours again on a pet project. And so I know that if I'm building new tests, and the testing framework is so freaking easy to set up, I know that if I'm starting a new project and it's a small project and I need some rudimentary tests, Ava. I don't have to deal with anything else. Ava. I don't have to deal with compiling. I don't have to deal with like anything. I can just pick this framework or this testing framework. So what I'm trying to, I guess, get at is that all these different frameworks and tools have their potential uses, and knowing what solutions are out there help you solve your own problems, right? So if you have a problem of, I need to set up a testing framework, but this is a very small project, hey, I know that there's a testing framework for that will be very easy to set up for small projects called Ava. Now, Ava is not necessarily meant for small projects, but it's very easy to set up. It's very quick, so I can go ahead and do that. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that this hot technology is not coming out in a vacuum. It's not like somebody sitting and, you know, they're just thinking, I gotta get a pen, and they're like, hey man, you know, we should create a new front-end framework. Yeah, let's throw virtual DOM in it, but make the syntax completely different. People will want to learn it, and then make a badass presentation with skewed performance metrics. No, nobody's sitting around doing that. Maybe some proof of concept stuff, whatever. But most of the time, it's edge cases that drive the technology. You know, you come up with solutions because you're driven to an edge that is unsolved, currently unsolved or badly solved. So, you know, let's say Gulp. What was Gulp good for? It's a task runner. What was Grunt good for? It was a task runner, but with a different API. The reason why Gulp won or started taking over Grunt is because it was easier to have several steps happen at once and easier to program that. So it was an edge case of, you know, there were several situations in Grunt that you would convert a file, write to disk, read it, convert it in for a second step, write to disk. So you'd have these like temporary writes to disk, and that was very slow. You know, the people that came up with Gulp, they're like, hey, first of all, we want a more programmatic API, so that's easier to work with. So edge case, we want something that's easier to work with. And then on top of that, we want to be able to, you know, batch like 6 steps together in memory without having to write the disk and read from it again to slow down. So the speed was another bottleneck there. And all of a sudden you have a new way of doing things. Now, Gulp is not as popular anymore because what you can do in Gulp, you can now do in Webpack now. Like, why did Webpack take over Browserify? Well, Webpack is built for code splitting. It's built for, you know, being able to do something similar to what Grunt did, like with the JSON file and JSON structure. But the cool thing about, you know, Webpack is the fact that you get to, just like in Gulp, batch together like several different post processors. You can say, hey, I want post CSS. Great. I want post CSS with these plugins. And you know what? On top of using those plugins, I need to minify it. I need source maps. I need this. And all of these steps together can be configured in Webpack very easily. And it's very performant. And so it started taking over Browserify because Browserify wasn't as flexible. And it was able to deal with CSS, not just JavaScript. Anyway, so that's something that's been fascinating me. I've been working with a lot of new technologies. I've been exploring a lot of new stuff, like Elm, like I've been doing a lot of Angular 2 stuff. I've been doing a lot of Electron stuff. So all these new technologies, I've been exploring them just in my own personal time for fun. And I'm finding that whenever at work I get stuck, I think to myself, like, do I know any framework out there? Do I know any library out there that deals with this specific problem? And more than a few times I stumbled on, like, let's say, RxJS being a solution. And I don't want to implement it at work because I don't know it well enough. But I looked at a problem and I'm like, RxJS, this is what it's built for. This is exactly the use case. You know, we're using Redux and I'm dealing with a problem. And I look at it and I'm like, this is what Redux was used for. Anyway, rant over. I hope you guys enjoyed my first vlog. I'm hoping to. It's gonna start out shitty, like always, and then it's gonna get better. So, like, you know, maybe next week I'll hook up my DSLR and you're gonna get better video. Maybe I'll do manual focus so that you can actually see my face. It's not a blurry mess. We'll see.